Welcome to the hot seat. Welcome back to the hot seat. Today's guest is Erdi Babili, aka Learning to Human. Erdi is a coach for handstands, flexibility, and strength, and he's a long-time friend. He is all about becoming more human in a modern world. How can we utilize both a physical practice and also lifestyle choices to optimize our health, feel better, and feel more human? So, Erdi.
Hey,
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us on another brisk British winter's day. I'd like to start things off and ask you a couple questions. Why did you become a coach? Often, maybe some people want to become a PT or they want to become a coach because they like training. They don't really like helping people. Well,
Yep.
What was the reason? What kind of motivated you and inspired you to become a coach?
a few things were going on when I decided to become a coach. I don't know if you remember Elliot Hulse. I was actually watching a lot of his videos at the time. So I was at university.
We should add that this would have been Elliot Hulse.
The YouTuber.
Yeah.
Oh, this
prior to
this is like
him-
back in 2009, 2010. Yeah, there we go.
early days, Elliot
yeah.
Hulse.
14 years ago. Because he's very different now. But anyway, okay, another topic. And he was making some really good videos about basically if you create a job for yourself that you love to do, it's then no longer really a job. I can't remember. He had like this 3-stage motto. I forgot what it was. And at the time, I was studying environmental science, but I was also teaching octopush. So octopush is underwater hockey at university. So there are lots of things happening here in this story, but they'll come together in a second. So I was teaching and coaching octopush, which is an underwater sport, which involves having a few people underwater. Everyone's got a stick in one hand and a weighted puck at the bottom of the pool, which you're pushing around, passing over to each other, and you're basically just trying to score goals with this puck.
It's hockey underwater.
Hockey underwater. It was great. But what I realized was, while coaching that, I realized I really enjoyed coaching it, and I also really enjoyed seeing people develop in the sport. Then we started to host a training session. It was like so where you're not actually playing the game, but we're just swimming. I was doing like these swimming coaching sessions for the team and watching people basically get faster, get fitter, hold their breath for longer, etc. All along the side of looking up loads of training videos online and looking up all these Elliot Hulse videos about becoming your own boss and doing your own job, etc. And it got to the end of uni. I was now in last year of environmental science. I was like, okay, I like environmental science. I like the environment. I like animals. But what I really like is watching people develop under my tuition. And that's when I decided, you know what, I want to teach something physical. I don't know what it is yet, but I want to do it. And eventually I just ended up going down the route of becoming a personal trainer because it was the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, it kind of gets you introduced into the world of fitness. I think most people don't come across, and the first thing that gets them into training is necessarily like gymnastic strength training.
Yes.
Or advanced flex. Like that's usually a progression. Usually there's a law that brings people in. Probably for myself it was bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I wanted to look good. I was like 18, 19 or whatever. Watching men's physique stuff, and I was training chest 5 days a week.
It's good inspiration. That.
But you kind of skipped that a little bit. I know, obviously being friends with you for a long time, and you kind of like jumped straight into like Poliquin.
Right.
As the first thing you're exposed to. And I feel like almost as a rite of passage, you need to go through some shit fitness advice before you get to good fitness advice.
Well, yes.
But you jumped straight into the deep end. Is there anything that you feel like you missed out on? Like you wish you went through a phase of training? Maybe you wish you did P90X or something. I don't know.
So I was one of those guys who, and I still am, who overanalyze but don't actually put things into practice. So I spent a lot of my years at uni, and especially my last year at uni, where I was watching these Elliot Hulse videos, also researching lots of Poliquin stuff. I went through the phase of reading about building muscle and gaining strength. But here's the thing: it's like you can read all the books in the world, but if you don't actually have experience training, there's only so much you can apply. Like it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
You can't learn feelings through books. So like when you have to push through hard efforts in your sets and reps, you can't learn how to do that via a book. And I didn't. And this is what I missed out on. I missed out on actually having like some good discipline in my training in my early years. Okay, maybe my programming was okay, and I was, instead of doing 10 by 10, I was doing like some 5 by 5s,
doing like 20 sets of squats.
Exactly, instead of doing like the 20 set squat thing, which I think you take a 10 RM and do 20 reps of it or something like that. I never actually did that, but I didn't build that base of discipline. Instead, what I built was more of a base of knowledge, which I think holds true even to now. Like I'm nowhere near as disciplined as an athlete as I am as a coach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you have obviously a passion about doing your training and developing yourself. We were talking about this actually yesterday, but then I think if you're coaching people, that passion changes. Your focus is more on like, how do I get these people the best results? I need to spend some time in the trenches. I need to understand the process of training. I need to obviously proven at some degree, got myself to a reasonable level, but really what matters is, their training, their progress.
Yes.
Making sure that they're making the most out of it.
Yes. Yeah, for me it was always about, okay, how can I maximize results from my students, as opposed to how can I align my work so that I maximize results from my own practice, if that makes sense.
Yes. So if I was to say to you, bro, you can't like planche or do a million handstand push-ups, how can you ever be a good coach if you're not a good athlete? What do you think the difference is, and why do you think there's a difference between people who are good athletes and people who are good coaches?
Okay, that's we can unwind.
Because I think
that.
The reason I talk about this is because people see on social media, they're like, that person looks a certain way, I want to look that way.
Yeah.
That person can do a certain thing, I want to be able to do those things. Why is that not always the case, or is it the case? Are they good coaches?
Yeah, it's not the case. I mean, we've seen it. We see it day and day. Like, you just look at Instagram and look at the people who are doing these amazing things, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, and you'll find them all across the world. But then look at the percentage of those hundreds of thousands of people, or thousands of people, whatever it is, who are doing these good things. Look at the percentage of them that are now producing good results.
People like themselves.
Yeah, but not through a scalable fitness program, because we see that a lot. We see a lot of really good athletes who release a scalable fitness product, like a program, and then we will see them post the results of people who have done this program. But if we think about it, these guys have got over 100,000 followers,
they might have
whatever.
1,000 people going through their program.
Exactly, it's a filter effect.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. If you sell 5,000 programs and you get, I don't know, 10 to 50 people who get some okay results out of it, which you should from any program, you will be able to sell those results. But it doesn't make you a good coach. It just means you've put a program together.
You've had enough people go through the meat grinder to realize their potential. I guess the sign of a good coach is that
Molly is
trying to destroy the microphone setup.
She is ramming my foot with the stick.
It means you need to throw it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I think the sign of a good coach is that they can make every person who comes to them,
yes, or at least a high percentage,
get the most out of their training. And I don't think, like, at the end of the day, not everyone is going to... The people you see on Instagram, that's the 1%.
Yeah.
Probably less than the 1%.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started getting into bodyweight, calisthenics, even flexibility stuff. I mean, flexibility stuff, you see people do splits and you'd be like, that's really cool. And then now it's like people are doing back handsprings into front split.
Oh, man.
And I'm like,
that's crazy.
Or doing a side flip into a middle split or something, and then like landing in splits, and that's crazy. Or people are just doing like 10 planche push-ups, and like that back in the day would have been not even conceivable, but the level is so high now.
But being in the field that we're in, this is obviously where we're comparing. We're making comparisons across these feats of strength and flexibility. Yeah. But also a good coach could literally just be someone who is working with a lot of people, keeping a lot of people happy and helping a lot of people get results in whatever it is they're chasing towards.
Yeah, I mean,
if that's losing 5% body fat.
Yeah, if somebody getting the first chin up.
Yeah, exactly.
Being able to touch their toes.
Exactly. I think that's amazing, because you have a lot of that as well. You have a lot of these small-time trainers who are working with people with these more easier, or I say easier goals, like it's a bad thing, like basically the startup goals for bodyweight strength or strength training, like chin-ups, and they're getting really good results. They're helping people do chin-ups that have never done chin-ups before. And that's, to me, that's more impressive than the person doing 10 planche push-ups in the corner and just like showing it off on the gram, which again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different field. It's like, they're almost doing it for performance, and it is a performance. It's more of a show than it is a teaching room, a coaching field. Basically being a coach and being an athlete are two different things.
Following on from that, I want to basically comment on Instagram fitness versus actual fitness. Exercises you see online versus
Oh.
exercises you would actually give to a client.
You just you know all the right questions to get me on a rant, don't you? It's like you're just gonna have me rant about the whole industry. No, I get what you're saying. Again, so
and like, so this is where I'd say that you'd have maybe the theoretical coach
yeah,
versus the practical coach, the person who actually can put something into practice and get people results, versus the people who are like, oh, this is a nice idea, or
Yeah.
it would look good. It's something that looks impressive, but isn't necessarily practical. Where do you?
All right, so I don't want to go down the complete like rant route on this, so I'll try and have a different perspective on it. I think marketing is very different to coaching in terms of sometimes you need to market things which you might not necessarily use as your way of teaching, if that makes sense. But you basically you put out a nice marketable sort of video which people are going to like because that's just how people are, so you use like a hook or something to pull them in, but then when you actually train them you might not exactly be using that specific method that you marketed or that exact same tool and those fitness exercises that you posted about. So I think sometimes coaches do that, and I don't think that's too much of a problem. I think they've just found their way of gaining an audience, and then at the end of the day if they're getting results, they're getting results. But yes, there is also the element of, here are 3 new exercises for your pancake. And then you're looking at those 3 new exercises and you're saying to yourself, okay, I have never seen this person ever use these exercises before. I've never seen them recommend them for their students to use before. I've never come across anything. So can you give me some validation for why these are relevant? Like, can you tell me how you've come to use these exercises and why? Or are they literally just something that you picked up or you thought about last night while you were going to bed and you just want to try them out, which is
like,
okay.
This seems like a cool thing to do.
Yeah, and it's like, let me know that. Just say, hey, look, I think these, I've been thinking about a few different concepts. This one seems like a really good idea for the pancake. Give it a try. Let me know if it works for you. Great. But it's not advertised that way. It's, here are 3 pancake drills that's going to improve your pancake, but which you've never seen before. But the novelty is that they're unique.
I think the novelty is what I would sort of deem as the cheap sell.
Yeah.
On when it comes to fitness, ultimately, what matters when you want to make progress. Like, what's the crucial thing? We can go for a little bit of bodyweight strength. We can go for a little bit of flexibility. Like, really, do you need to be doing 20 different drills for your pancake, or do you just need to be doing a couple of the ones that work really well?
Exactly. It's like there's a couple that's going to work well for your current level, and then in 12 weeks time you're probably going to need to change it to something else because you've made some adaptations and now you're ready for the next level. And realistically you're doing like maximum 4 different exercises at most over this time, and then after 18 months. This
is specifically flexibility we're talking about here, maybe like front splits or pancake. If we're talking about flexibility, you've got to think about the big 5. So you've got we'd say the big 5, right?
Our
so
big 5, yeah,
bridge, front split, mid split,
pancake,
sat, seated and straddle, folding forward, and then pike.
Yeah.
So forward, fold. So for those, you might have 3 or 4 exercises that work really, really well, and you just work. It's a bit like Bruce Lee. He said, I don't fear a man who knows 1,000 kicks or 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. I might be butchering that slightly, but that's essentially the gist of things.
I think, and that is almost the case with fitness, with learning flexibility as well. Like there's times and place for like a new drill here and there to fill something out, but when you're actually training, you're training the same thing over and over again because that's what you need to create the adaptations for the goal that you're working towards.
Better, progressively load it, maybe use a little bit more weight or a little bit more intensity. You can hold it a little bit longer.
Exactly. And then what happens is, you've probably noticed it as well, some of your passive stretching and some of the stretches that you're doing, as it develops, you start finding new sensations within that same drill. So that same drill is now giving you new benefits, which you didn't realize 6 months ago. But you wouldn't have noticed that if you kept switching your drills over. You know what I mean? You have to stick with it for a while to peel the layers of the onion, as like Emmett Lewis describes.
Peel it back. I feel like even the same drill at different levels of. This is where maybe if we're talking about bench press or squatting, the movement's the same the whole time. We're changing the load. When it comes to flexibility, you have more range of motion to access a position. So the sensation, that's why, for example, with pancake, so seated straddle on the forward folding, it's going to stretch your hamstrings, adductors. most people will sit on the ground, try to fall forward, and they won't even be able to sit up straight.
Yeah.
And that drill is actually useless to them. So it might be a great drill, but it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Whereas standing is going to be a better practice. So like, yes, we can, as you get more flexible, the drills and the sensations and their effectiveness will change as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I feel like being a good coach is about the right drill at the right time.
Right drill at the right time, and having the discipline and the balls, dare I say it, to basically tell your student you need to stay on this for a bit longer, and not just like change the drill because you're expecting them to be bored, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, okay, everyone's very different. Like the people that come to me, they come to me for results. They want to actually achieve goals, as opposed to they just want directed fitness or directed exercise,
Sure.
which is a completely different playing field. But if they want results, it's my job to get them results. So I have to explain to them, you're doing well with this drill. We're going to keep going with it because you're getting some good results. We don't need to change it. And as soon as you explain it as there is more milk to gain from this cow, so why change the cow? They're like, okay, that makes sense. I will keep milking this cow.
Do you think part of the reason for that is that online you see a lot of people say, achieve splits in 30 days or achieve handstand in 30 days, or you see these very short duration periods of time where you see a body transformation, and I've got nothing wrong with that because sometimes it does happen. But like somebody like yourself, I've known you for 5-6 years, maybe longer, and you've made continuous progress over that period of time. And I think that's, if anything, more impressive. Somebody who's able to sustain progress over a period of 3 years is what good training looks like, because people progress at different rates.
Yes.
If you're making progress of any kind,
yes, speed isn't important.
Like there's a really, that if you're able to go further, if you're able to lift a little bit more weight, progress is progress. It doesn't matter how quick it is. Oftentimes people want the fastest progress possible.
Yeah.
But if you're making progress at all, that's great, and you should almost to some extent not change things up. People want to add another session in. They want to try and do a little bit more.
Yeah.
To make more progress.
Yeah, it's very addictive.
But it's like progress is progress. Just stick with what you're doing.
Exactly.
Keep doing it. We're going to milk this cow a little bit longer.
Progress is a drug. Like, it's a big dopamine hit. If you go to the weight room and you lift more weight, you feel great doing it. You put an extra 2.5 kilos on your back squat, you feel amazing. So what you want to keep feeling amazing. So then you're like, oh, maybe I should back squat twice a week.
Yeah, or do another set.
Yeah, I'll make faster progress. I'll make more of it, and I'll feel this feeling more often. But realistically, like, we know that's not the case. That's just not how things work.
No.
I mean, unless you're willing to,
No, adaptation can only happen so quickly.
Yeah.
If you aren't making progress, what should you do?
Oh, okay. Well, that's when you need to change something. It's like, what do they say? The crazy person.
Oh yeah, the Einstein's quote.
Einstein's
the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Which is basically handstands.
Which is handstands, and handstands is insanity.
Yeah. But handstands aside, what happens if you've hit a serious plateau, you've listened to someone like me and you're like, no, you know what? I have stuck to this drill, and I've stuck to this drill for 6 months now, and I've listened to what you said, and I still haven't made any gains. What do I do? All right, something needs to change. The first thing I look at is recovery. That's usually the number one thing I look at. Is like, what's going on? How often are you doing this? Are you recovering enough? If you take a week off and then try it again, have you made any progress? If not, then it's probably not recovery based. So okay, cool. So we probably need a new stimulus, or we just need a new approach.
Sorry, say it was recovery based.
Yeah.
What would I do?
Probably you're looking at reducing your volume on how often you're doing it.
The reason I asked that question is because I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, did you? Am I that predictable?
No, but it's the right answer to give.
Oh, good.
And the reason I wanted to ask it, because a lot of people's first reaction is like, I'm not breaking progress. I'm going to do more. I'm going to try harder. And it's such an aberrational, like, I respect people who are in the gym so much. And I'm like, you just get better results if you did a little bit less, which just sounds like the wrong advice to give, but it just is. It
reminds me of this guy 2 years ago, coaching a guy, I'm not going to give his name, but East Coast US. And he was stuck on 20-pound pull-ups. And he come to me in his consultation. He's like, hey, man, I just can't break the plateau of these 20-pound pull-ups. And what's 20-pound pull-ups? It's like just under 10 kilos. It wasn't much. But he's a strong guy-ish. He trains a lot. I'm like, what are you doing for them? He says, well, I'm training them every other day. I was like, what? He said, yeah, I'm training weighted pull-ups every other day because I want them to improve. I'm like, well, that's why they're not increasing. Like, you're not recovering. You can't train weighted pull-ups every other day. And like this is a guy with a normal job. He worked in a school. He had a 9 to 5. He, he had a
other
wife,
lifestyle
he had a house.
stresses.
Exactly. He's not an athlete, right? Like you can't train to weighted pull-ups every day. So what we did is I literally put him on weighted pull-ups once a week. In what was it? I think it was in 12 weeks. He built up to 45 pounds on his pull-ups or something.
So doubled it.
Yeah, he like over doubled it. And he's like, oh wow, I just had to train less. Like, yeah, you have to train less. Yeah, I agree completely.
Okay, and so say training less is the first protocol, recovery.
Yeah.
So first thing you should do, maybe try doing it once a week rather than twice a week, or try doing less sets, but obviously keeping the focus, the intensity, the effort the same. If that's not the case, if you don't see any progress, then what's the next thing you're thinking?
All right, so we're looking at flexibility or we're looking at strength, because it differs a little bit. With strength, it's usually not movement pattern based in terms of do you need to change a lot with the complexity of the movement, where with flexibility...
So sorry, just to clarify, by that you mean if I'm doing dips or I'm doing chin-ups.
You've plateaued on your weighted chin-up.
I don't necessarily need to come up with some fancy new drill. I probably just need to keep doing the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, a different variable.
Different rep range,
different rep range, different type of weight. You probably don't need to stop doing chin-ups and start doing like seated rows, for example, or lat pull-downs to improve a chin-up. There's something else going on. So with flexibility, though, it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I found with flexibility, if I start hitting a plateau with a drill, then it's generally what needs to happen is you need to change the approach before you get to that drill. It's like, okay, you're either doing like too many accessories before doing your mid split, for example. Let's say you plateau with mid split, because I think the mid split's a good one where it almost resembles strength training in terms of you just need to keep doing the middle split, but you change the things around the middle split to improve it, or at least this is what I have.
Yeah, what's the limitation that you have?
Yeah.
Are you lacking strength in your abductors, your glutes to pull the leg out? Or are you limited by external rotation of the hip? Yeah,
because I've seen some guys that are like, they'll go through a middle split training, but they're doing like 15 different exercises before they actually get to the middle split. So like, because they've seen it on Instagram, I still see it to this day, like supposedly high level trainers giving like a 30-minute sort of like middle split flow before they actually do the exercises. So and it's like there's hip internal, hip external, hip abduction, hip adduction.
You kind of cover every base rather than
exactly
like for the individual what do you need to improve.
So it's a matter of sometimes it's a matter of just reducing the number of accessories, or even just removing them all completely. Do a couple of leg swings, get your hips warmed up, and then go for your middle split sets, and then see if that makes any difference. Because this sometimes happens with people. And again, this almost comes down the recovery route, but not entirely. It might just be that they're too fatigued by the time they get to the mid splits after doing the accessories.
Yeah, I mean, stretching is intense. It's like strength training at the end of the day. And if you've got something demanding, like like if you're doing active middle split, if you're trying to do a middle split hold, or you're standing, letting your legs slide apart, it's heavy. If you're tired already, your body's going to stop you sooner because it doesn't want you to hurt yourself.
Exactly. The stretch reflex is very smart. It's there to protect you. But then you got the opposite extreme where, like, for example, someone doesn't do any accessories, and what they do for the middle splits is they just do the middle splits. And it's like, okay, and this is where what you were saying comes into play. It's like, okay, well, what's limiting you now? Is it your glutes? Is it a specific adductor? You've got 5 adductors. Like, have you trained the different positions to resemble the different ones so that you can see which one's the limiting factor? Your tailor pose, your prone tailor pose, etc. And then, so then you'd have to look at the accessories there, try and figure out your limitation, and then you would continue with your middle splits while working on those limitations.
Yeah. And I think probably the hardest thing now for people to take that advice is to figure out, like, what are my limitations? So is there...
That's tough.
And obviously this is where, like, having a coach comes in, but there is obviously good information out there. There's some good products as well out there that can take you through this, but is there a way that people can kind of try to figure out that at home?
Yeah, this is tough. I am...
So okay, I'll give you an example rather than put you on that spot, because I have an idea in mind.
Go on.
Usually what I would do if I was going through something, we didn't really know maybe what the issue is we'd have a set point. So we'd go, maybe we use our pike as an example. Yeah, so a forward fold, hamstring.
Yes.
We go test our forward fold, do a little warm up, fold into it, take some pictures, get the person to remember the sensation. How does that feel? Okay, let's have a look and see if your hip rotation is impacting your pike. So we'll go do an internal rotation, a 90-90 stretch. We'll stretch the glutes a little bit, then we'll go back, we'll test the pike again. Does it feel better? Does it feel worse? Does it feel no different? Okay, if it doesn't, there's no change, cool. It's probably not going to be a factor. Okay, let's try your sciatic nerve. Let's floss your sciatic nerve by, moving the foot back and forward. That can impact hamstring flexibility. Let's retest. Oh, we see a change. That could be limiting you.
Yes, exactly. So you've basically got a series of limitations that for the forward fold that you will take someone through, but that's after 8 years of accumulated knowledge.
It's much more qualitative as well. I would judge it by feeling. How does that stretch feel for you? You can obviously see the changes. You can see people who can go deeper. But
how do we get someone who doesn't have 8 years or 9 years of this accumulated knowledge in flexibility training and then teach them a self-assessment protocol without having to give them 8 to 9 years of accumulated knowledge? This is where it gets a bit trickier. So hip rotation is generally one of my main areas that I'll always check first.
I feel like that's a standard. I feel like everyone should have.
Yeah, hip internal and hip external rotation. The easiest way, the way I do it is I just sit on a chair. I get someone to sit on a chair, something high enough so their foot doesn't touch the floor, and I just get them to actively internally rotate the foot, the
basically
leg.
Keeping the knee facing forward.
Keeping the knee facing the camera.
Try to lift the foot as high as you can.
Exactly, to the right and then to the left, and then do it on the other leg as well. So internally and externally. And then I look for...
what are you looking for if people give that a go?
I'm not even looking for like a big range. What I'm looking for is there a big difference between internal and external, generally?
You want it to be roughly similar?
I want it to be roughly similar. And I find that usually if there's a big difference, someone's got like quite a lot of internal but not very much external, I will then give them external rotation priority exercises, and that will sometimes help the situation.
Okay.
So rotation is one thing I look for. To be fair, if they've got like very, very little in both, but they're looking to do a full mid split, I would still need them to accumulate a bit in both.
Yeah, you need to widen that.
Yeah.
The between each internal and external
like
rotation.
if let's say they got 5 degrees on each side, it's not going to be enough usually. You can probably get away with it so some people can, but generally, like when we speak about the 70% rule, in terms of the 70% of the population will respond to most things, then they will need a bit more than 5 degrees. I usually go for close to 40 degrees or so on each side. Is usually a nice sweet spot.
Yeah, personally, I'm similar. I have a little bit less internal rotation because I think a lot of people, not everyone can access that.
Yeah.
Based on the hip anatomy, most people can get external.
Yes, yeah. Internal is definitely a lot harder. It's just a lot more painful as well. It's
crampy.
It's very crampy and it's not an enjoyable thing to train. And then the other thing I would look at, so if we would just go for like 2 main general rules of thumb, is what is their active flexibility like in comparison to their current passive flexibility range?
I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Oh, good. So let's go with your forward fold. You're trying to get your forward fold. You're like, okay, I've kind of hit a plateau here. What can I assess? I can get my fingertips to the floor, and if I take a picture of myself with my fingertips to the floor, I can see how much of an angle there is between my lumbar spine and my thighs.
Yeah, your back and your leg, basically.
Exactly.
Is it 90 degrees, 100 degrees?
Yeah.
Is it less?
Because we have a lot of people who will be at exactly a 90-degree bend there. They won't realize it, but they've got hands on floor because they've got like a long arms and flexy upper back. So... And to them that's impressive, but then when we look at it, we don't see it as a hands to floor pike. We see it as a huge hip flexor deficit. Like we look at it and we're like, oh, this person needs some hip flexor strength.
So the test that they would do is they would then
sit on the floor and maybe like do a pike. Well, there's a couple you can do, but you can see I'll say 2 of them. One of them is sitting on the floor and just your standard seated pike compression. So hands just behind the knees while you're sitting on the floor with your legs out in front of you, and then you're just going to lift your legs off the floor. Can you get them off the floor? And then the other one is standing, just lift one leg up straight in front of you. How high can you get it?
Yeah, making sure a lot of people they bend the rear leg when they do that to try and sort of tilt backwards. So make sure you keep the back leg straight.
You want the back leg straight. But even if the back leg doesn't get straight, what we're looking for is the angle between the leg that you're lifting, so the thigh, and the lumbar spine, again, the back. And does that angle represent the same angle you can get when you're doing a standing forward fold?
Are you looking for 100%?
No, I'm looking for within 70%.
70% of your passive range you can actively lift.
So if they can't, and most of the time they can't, it's like, this is a weakness. As soon as you fix that, in fact, you can see it there and then. So you see how you're saying about the sciatic nerve glide test and then the rotation test. You just give them a hip flexor contraction and then make them do the forward fold again, and they've instantly improved their range.
So this is quite funny because the next question I wanted to ask you was, as a because we were talking about general rules that you could apply to anything flexibility based. I feel one of the main things is antagonistic strengthening, which is essentially what you've just described.
Yes.
So I don't know. Could you briefly explain what antagonistic strengthening is?
Yes.
It's one of those things that, like, I feel like anyone who does stretching, if you did some antagonistic strengthening before you're stretching, you're going to be more flexible.
So antagonistic strength is basically strengthening the muscles which are being shortened in your stretched position. So whenever you go for a stretch, whatever your stretch, it could be you stretch your biceps or you stretch your thighs.
Let's go with, I think,
Should we
stick
give
on
an
the forward
example?
fold. Yeah, stick on the forward fold is
okay.
our example,
Well,
like touching your toes.
Stay with one theme. It's easier to concentrate. So you're trying to touch your toes. What are you stretching? You're stretching your hamstrings. Now, if something is being lengthened, that means something else is being shortened. So what's being shortened when you're going for a forward fold? Well, generally the anterior chain, so the muscles on the front side of the body, specifically the top of the legs, so the quads and the hip flexors are being shortened, and maybe even like the lower abs. What that means is if you can get them to shorten consciously and actively, and you can increase the strength in those shortening muscles, you'll have a much easier time shortening those muscles, which then gives you a much easier time lengthening the muscles that you were trying to lengthen in the first place, which is your hamstrings.
Yeah. It's, I guess, to put a technical term on it, it'd be a reciprocal inhibition.
Yes.
So
Reciprocal inhibition.
So when you do a bicep curl, your bicep is contracting and your tricep has to lengthen.
Exactly. And it does also play a part in with the stretch reflex a bit as well.
Yes.
From what I understand, it will help lower the stretch reflex. So
well, you're having a conversation with your body. You're telling your body, I want to go to this location, and it's your body's trying to figure out that puzzle to make it possible.
yeah, and it's now basically communicating with both sides of the coin. Instead of only, you're not just shouting at the back of the legs to lengthen. You're now talking with the front of the chain, like the guys at the front, like, hey guys, help us out here. Like, pull us into this a little bit deeper, and we can lengthen a little bit more. Yeah. It's a two-way effort.
So as you said, an example of that might be sitting on the floor, sitting in a pike. Hands in front of you by your knees, trying to lift the legs up.
Yes.
A pike core compression. What other examples could be an antagonistic strengthening exercise to help improve your hamstring flexibility?
For your hamstring flexibility, so we said the other one, which was a stand-in front scale, which basically means if you're standing up, one leg stays on the floor, keep it straight as you can, and lift the other leg up as high as you can. And then just go for a big contraction there. I like to start people off with 3 by 10 second contractions. If they can't really get anywhere above 45 degrees, because there are some people who are just very weak in that position, I just make them do it with a bent knee, and it still helps.
Yeah.
So,
or, I mean, you could even try doing it lying on the floor. It changes the vector of gravity a bit.
Yes, you can do the supine variation. Yeah, lying on the floor, one leg up towards the air. That one works really well too. But I like the standing one because it does get the bottom leg working, and it's generally a deficit for most people in this day and age. Their glutes just don't work at extending the hips very well.
Sure.
So that's kind of one of my like core movements I give to most people as like my foundations in coaching. What else could you do? And then you've got things like the block crushers. So basically putting an object between the top of your thighs and your lower abdomen. Usually something like a yoga block, and then you try to crush that block as hard as you can by squeezing it with both sides of the chain. So squeezing it, pulling your thighs into the block and pulling your abs into the block.
Almost like you're trying to do a crunch or something, like literally a crunch, an abdominal crunch.
Exactly.
In a pike stretch.
That's one very effective way to sort of strengthen that chain and teach the muscles how they need to contract for you to lengthen the hamstrings.
Lastly, I'm glad we managed to talk a lot about flexibility, because I know it's something you're very good and very skilled in. It's something we both had a similar education and learning from people such as Emmett Lewis.
Yes.
So obviously big shout out to him.
Yeah.
Your handle on Instagram, Learning to Human.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like we chatted a bit about training. I just want to ask you, what ways outside of training do you try to be more quote unquote human? Like what does that mean to you?
What does being human mean to me? I think so I'm from North Cyprus, and every time I'd go back to North Cyprus to see my family there, Well, I say go back. I was born in London, but my family are from North Cyprus. Whenever we'd go back to the village, and that's where my nan lives. She lives in a small village in northern Cyprus. And, you know, she'd have her own chickens. She used to have her own goats at one point. She'd have fruit trees in the garden, etc. And I think I took it for granted at the time. I was just a kid. I was like, where am I being taken? I'm being taken to the village. Like, where's the comfort of my house? But essentially, what I've realized over the years is that type of lifestyle is slowly turning into the favored lifestyle by modern day humans who are realizing that most of the artificial sort of environments that we've created are actually harming us. So for me, when I say learning to human, it's kind of been, all right, how can I live in this artificial world, and how can I live in the modern world? Because it's hard to, go back to living in a cave, for example. I'm not saying, I think there's a term for this. I forgot what it is.
There's a lot of benefits of modern civilization.
Yes.
You're not rejecting that. You're just
Well, there's a term for people who reject it. I forgot what it is. I'm not one of those. But anyway, I'm not saying that we should be avoiding it, but I'm saying, all right, how can we? Because there's obviously a lot of detrimental effects on our health from current developments in society, whether it's like from increased EMFs, whether it's through increased plastics and toxins in the air, air pollution, light pollution. Like, here's the thing, like there's a lot of things out there to get you when you're living in the city without you realizing, and it's all cushioned up by comfort of living, and you're having a comfortable house and having like a nice bed and a warm apartment or whatever it is. It doesn't seem so bad when
I think as well, you there's an element of homeostasis, right? So you get used to the environment that you're in, and it's only when maybe you go on holiday or you get out of the city and like something changes, maybe you realize it there, or you don't realize it, but you feel different.
Exactly. And you'll probably be like, oh, why do I have much more clarity of mind? Why do I feel much better after eating this organic food and this like less processed food? Why do I feel much better in the sun? And you start, you're not sure. Sometimes you think, oh, it's because I'm having a holiday and I'm not at work. I mean, for some people it will be that's the case.
There's no stress and other things.
But I've been living like my normal working lifestyle in London, and then doing the same thing in somewhere like the Azores and in Cyprus and Turkey and other places, and like, oh wow, there is actually a big difference in how I feel, how I sleep. Like the stats are different on my ring, my Aura ring. It kind of like records your stats, tells you about your HRV and etc. And you notice there are differences. So things that, learning as human for me has kind of been a bit about, all right, how do I remain living in the modern world, while improving and my health and not putting myself at risk to modern world diseases, if that makes modern world illnesses and ailments. And it's been. Working with a nutritionist the last couple of years has been really helpful, because he has a very holistic approach on it.
Yeah, mutual friend Ryan Carter, Live Vitae.
That's right.
A friend for a long time. I'd love to have him on the podcast actually, but
that's good shout.
He's left and he's gone to South America.
You're going to have to go to Nicaragua to get him
take
on
the sauna with us on the boat.
Yeah, he's like, let's fucking go. So working with him has been helpful, but obviously I had this like interest in it before working with him as well, and I think, to be honest, the Poliquin stuff was very into it.
Yeah, he's pretty hot on environmental toxins.
He was huge on it. Again, like to the point where, a lot of people would basically not take him seriously because some of the claims that he would make. But even so, he basically he makes the topic aware to people. And I think
most people, like, even if they would have reject this, for whatever reason, you might reject. I think it would be hard to argue when you think about it realistically, and sometimes I think if people were like, oh no, that's rubbish, you're just, I think it's just coping with the fact that, maybe they're in a situation that they feel that they can't change. Well, and I think your average person, maybe they go to the city, they go to work when they're younger, and then when they get older, they're like, oh no, I want to move outside to the country, I want to go. I think that's kind of like, it's almost a relatively a natural sort of life cycle of things.
Yeah, but by that point, they've ruined their mitochondria levels. They've demolished their gut lining. They've done loads of things to their body, which they're now going to have to pay the price for.
It's much easier to not mess yourself up in the first place.
Exactly, but the like you said, it's hard to acknowledge these things because the more you look into it, the more paranoid you start to get. Mm-hmm. And it almost causes a sickness in itself when you start to try to optimize your health. I don't like to use that phrase too much because there is like a bit of a pretentious sort of approach about it, and it does cause a bit of paranoia and anxiety.
I think as well it can be deemed slightly selfish.
Yes.
if you're doing things and you're saying, oh, like, I'm optimizing my health, it kind of makes then everyone else's decision
Yes.
is suboptimal.
Exactly. It's like,
Which is
why are you accepting to be suboptimal when you
which
can
is not
optimize yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Which is not necessarily the case. Sometimes people aren't in the positions to make those choices, and most people are just trying to just get through life at the end of the day. We have enough hardship.
Yeah.
If you had maybe to finish up a few rules that you think, because I think that, like, for me personally as well, I think you don't want to be thinking about this all the time. That does make you anxious. It does make you, it's not a good mindset to be in. But if you have rules and things that you can follow, and that are flexible, it makes it easier. If you're in social situations, you're going out for food or
Exactly,
etc. So, maybe if you give us 3-4 rules that you think would help everyone.
Okay, so everyone thinks it's about including healthy foods into their diet, but realistically, it's about removing processed crap from the diets. Once you start removing a lot of, like, basically, let's just say processed foods, to keep it simple, you're going to have to eat something, and you'll be like, okay, so I need to eat non-processed foods. You'll naturally start eating whole foods. Basically, you will stop eating artificial nonsense, and you'll eat the way that you've been designed to eat as a human being.
Well, if you say no processed food, automatically you're like, okay, I'm going to have to buy some veg, I'm going to have to buy some meat.
I'm going to have to buy some veg, some meat, maybe some fruit, some nuts, whatever. Like, I'm just going to actually have to eat real food like we used to. This is the thing. Like, go back 40 years to what your parents would be eating, and they would be cooking at home.
Well, that's the thing. So I was going to say, I feel like a good rule is, like, you can have anything you want, but you've got to make it yourself.
Yeah, that's really,
If you want to eat cakes, that's fine, but you've got to go and make the cake.
Yes, you actually have to make it. Like, number one rule, make your own food. Right? That's it. Like, that would change a lot of people's lifestyles.
Sure.
The other thing, well, you said 3 things, right?
Hey,
so
whatever you want to give.
I've started. I took it for granted at first, but the whole blue light thing is actually quite big, and I've noticed that having some effects on my stats on my Oura ring in terms of my sleep and just generally how I feel the next day, etc. So if I reduce my blue light exposure in the last so many hours of the day, I do feel better the next day. Like, I've tested it. I've gone like a week where I like hammer it, and then like a week where I just like remove it, and I'm like, wow, I actually feel a lot different. And I look at my Oura ring stats for my sleep, and it's very different. My deep sleep improves, etc.
There's plenty of evidence as well.
There's so much evidence, and it's like, it's just such an easy fix that you can do. So by basically limiting or reducing your blue light exposure late in the evenings, a good like 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep, I think that will make a huge difference to a lot of people, because what that then does is it will improve sleep, which will then generally just start to improve circadian rhythm, which will then just generally have an after effect onto everything else. And then you will start to feel hungrier in the mornings, and you will start to crave more wholesome foods, and you actually have a palate for wholesome foods. Some people don't eat, I say healthy, I shouldn't say healthy. Some people don't eat real foods because they don't find it tasty. But it's because they've like just completely demolished.
Yeah, you get used to everything tasting super sweet or very intense. Yeah, it does.
And they're constantly looking for stimulus, which is what you get from things like blue light. That's another interesting thing. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah,
but right, when I was sending my food diary to Ryan, he's like, "Why are you having this cake late at night?" He's like, "Were you stimulated at the time?" Ryan, being the nutritionist that we mentioned, he's like, "Were you maybe exposed to some blue light?" And I was like, and then it clicked. It's like, that's interesting. So having blue light exposure in the evenings also increases just generally cravings for getting more dopamine fixes from other things. Okay. So when you start to reduce that, it plays an overall bigger effect in the picture.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm trying to think when you were saying that about winding down the night, something came to mind, which was the 4-3-2-1 rule.
Oh,
so it was like no exercise, any
within
more than 4 hours of sleep. Don't eat less than 3 hours from sleep. No work 2 hours prior to sleep, and then kind of no light, no artificial like 1 hour before sleep, or like not sitting on your phone and stuff.
Yeah,
so I think it's kind of a simple way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do like to have rules and regulations when it comes to these lifestyle choices, because that's why things like vegan and carnivore diets get so popular. It's because people want rules. Okay, I must not eat this.
It's simple to knock. This is why I said, like, give us a few rules that people can follow. Because if, like, you stick to these rules, you can kind of do other stuff. But if something is a definite no, it's a lot easier than having to make a choice each time. It becomes a lot less tiring.
It's very true. I haven't really thought of it in like the rules. This is the thing. I'm quite anti-rule. I don't like it because, but it does. Here's the thing: is it works for most people. So it is the smarter approach for most of the time when we're trying to help the masses. Like when you've got 300 people in front of you, it's much easier to give them a rule than it is to like just give them a statement.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
For example, like crisps. A lot of people love eating crisps. We know crisps aren't particularly great for various. You get eating oxidized rapeseed, sunflower oil, etc.
Yeah.
Like I just have a rule that I don't eat crisps, and I don't get tempted if somebody offers me crisps because I don't eat them.
Yeah,
it helps that I'm not a massive fan, but it's like I just don't do that.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's not a choice then. I don't have to. It's not something. I don't feel like I'm missing out either.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's go for one more rule. If it had to be a rule, I'm trying to decide between drink water as soon as you wake up, like before you put anything else into your mouth, or get 20 to 30 minutes of sunlight a day. I can't decide between.
I feel like you could put your 20 to 30 minutes of sunlight within the reduce artificial light, get more real light.
How
would
about
be a good rule?
Yeah, good point.
Water before.
I think water before everything else. This is the thing, like that would be a normal thing that most people would do, but in this day and age, it's just not anymore.
Sometimes you might get up and not have anything in, and the first thing you do is grab a coffee from somewhere. Yeah.
And you just you're having coffee.
Hydrate before you caffeinate.
Yeah, hydrate before you caffeinate. I think that would apply to a lot of people. I mean,
I think just in general, drink water as opposed to other things. Is probably like if you didn't drink any, if you only drank water and maybe coffee or tea, like you're probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel like there's an easy elimination there, just drinking
exactly
sugary drinks. Like we know the deal there.
Yeah. Just start getting comfortable with it. I think people struggle with it because again they get used to the sweet foods. And,
it's nice, man.
And the sweet drinks. It is
Coke
nice.
tastes good.
Yeah, it does.
Fanta does taste good.
It tastes good until you know what it does to you, and then you're like, I'm just drinking death.
Right, speaking of death, we're getting too comfortable in the cold here. I think we need to get hot and hot and cold.
Yeah.
Sauna, sea swim.
Let's do it.
And some more questions.
I look forward to them.
Welcome to the hot seat for the hot take.
This is my favourite part so far.
Definitely the best part, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's the best type of suffering.
Yeah.
I've got a few questions for you. So,
okay.
One, what is one thing that most people are missing in their physical practice, their strength training, their flexibility training, handstands? What's one thing that most people are missing?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of coaches will like try and make out as if there is like really important things that you have to do, like move your spine or your spine will break, things like this, but it's not true. I think like whatever you do, like do it, just have a nice include a bit of every plane.
So what you were trying to say is there's probably not one thing that is going to solve all your problems, or there's not one thing that people are missing. I mean, that, to be honest with you, is probably the right answer to that question. I answer that question because it's like, if you had to distill it down to one thing, it's like, what would you choose? But really, you're right. There's like nothing's going to solve your problems. Having a bit of, keeping your toes or fingering it in lots of different pies.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you've got the whole idea, jack of all trades, master of one, etc.
Master of none.
Master of none, exactly. I don't think. Again, I'm not like just suggesting like you should never have focus. You should never be so focused that you forget the reason you're doing things in the first place. You're trying to be strong, you're trying to be healthy.
Yeah. I think that's actually a good point, because I think most people train with the, wanting to be an athlete is not a problem.
Yeah.
But athletes are that example of being hyper focused of one thing, whereas actually the majority of people, ourselves included, would benefit from having just a nice well-rounded a bit of strength training, a little bit of cardio, a little bit of flexibility work.
But like even now, if we look at top level athletes and the modern approaches to their training, it is quite a hybrid approach. Like you'll have someone who does like a leg dominant sport doing some sort of rows and chin-ups, even if it's like 3 sets of 8 once a week.
You know what I mean? To keep some balance in there.
Because they have good coaches who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
My answer to the question, like I would say most people don't train hard enough.
That's good. Enough intensity.
Yeah, that's the one that
Yeah.
comes to mind straight away for me. And like the one thing I find myself saying to clients more often than not is just push a bit harder. Don't worry about doing as much. Just like whatever you're doing, make sure it's intense. Like just the amount of times that you do maybe a set of 10, it's like actually you probably could have done 14.
Yeah.
Eugene actually just had a good one, and he was recently posted. I don't know if you might have seen the post he made, and he was like talking similarly about this. And he said, look, choose a weight that you think you can do 8 reps.
Yeah.
Do 8 reps, rest 10 seconds, do as many as you can, rest 10 seconds, do as many as you can. And he said most people will be able to do like 20 of what they think they can do 8 reps of. Then there was a study done on intensity of strength training, and it was like, I think about 60% of people were kind of could do 2 to 5 more reps. I think 30% of people could do like 10 more reps than they're supposed to do. Yeah. And then there's only about 20% of people that actually hit something that they could do maybe 1 to 2 reps more of at most, and it was actually failure.
Hit the real limit.
What's the biggest mistake people make with nutrition?
They try to include healthy foods into their diet.
How's that a mistake?
Because they don't look at the things they should be taking out.
Okay.
I think damaging products into your body, so basically eating processed foods, is more damaging than the benefits of including healthy foods, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a bit like, the whole phrase that you can't outrun a bad diet.
Yes.
Adding exercise isn't going to change the fact that you eat shit.
Exactly.
So and the same thing, just because you had a kale smoothie,
exactly,
doesn't make up for the fact that you had a whole tub of Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah, going to the gym cafe and getting like a ginger shot as a detox, because they've sold it as a detox drink, isn't going to negate the negative effects of the shitty meal that you had last night.
We're not going for net health gains. We're just going for. You can't take away that just because you ate something bad doesn't balance out from having something good.
Yeah,
we're going for overall good.
Exactly.
If there was one piece of training equipment everyone should have, what would it be?
A pull-up bar.
Cool.
I would say gymnastic rings.
But you need somewhere to hang them.
You need somewhere to hang them, and most people just don't get outside enough to have places to hang them. So I think just the pull-up bar, have it fixed into your house in whatever way you possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's, to be honest with you, that would be fine as well. I think pull-up bar, then you can do chin-ups, pull-ups, hanging.
Like you can do squats on the floor, you can do lunges on the floor, you can do stretches on the floor, you can do push-ups, but you can't train your back, not properly.
Yeah, can't hang either.
You can't hang.
Can't brachiate.
Yeah, brachiate or stretch overhead.
Cool. I think that's 3 simple questions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much baklava is still trying to find my limit?
Baklava brethren! There is no limit to baklava. Basically, if you eat so much that you fall asleep, when you wake up, have a little bit more.
How long have you been training calisthenics?
Since I was 13, that's when I learned my first chin-up.
Oh shit, okay. Yeah. So that's like 19 years?
20 years, yeah, 19 years.
Best way to ease muscle tension when stretching?
So, what you want to do, you can do 2 things. You want to create a contraction, either in the muscle that's being stretched, so PNF, or was it reciprocal?
Reciprocal inhibition.
Reciprocal inhibition, or you want to create tension in the shortened antagonist muscle, so that will relax the stretched muscle.
What's the best value flexibility exercise you've seen people make the most gains with?
All right, this one is the forward fold contraction. So basically, when you're standing up like this,
any excuse to get out of the water,
and you push down onto an object like the floor,
like a block,
and you push and you hold for 10 seconds. Do that 3 times, and then retest your forward fold. Doing that over 6 to 12 weeks, your forward fold will improve massively.
Yeah, I love it. Last one, tips on creating a lifestyle as a movement coach that allows you to work from home and travel.
Fake it till you make it, baby. No, but creating a lifestyle, like you need an online income. So like you need to create an online income. So you need to start training people online, so that you can be wherever you want to be while you're training them. And the best way to do that is to just start offering coaching for free. Are you getting cold, mate? Don't worry about it.
I am getting cold,
It's
mate.
got-
It's gone off the scale.
Yes, you got to be learning to human out here. And then over time, you'll get better at coaching people and you can charge more. And then you don't need to coach as many to make as much money, and you can afford Airbnbs wherever you want.
I think we should finish up with a dunk.
Yeah.
Ready?
There we go.
3, 2, 1. That's been poll calls. I hope you enjoyed the poll questions from you guys. Let's get back in the sauna. So there you have it, episode 2 of Hot Takes with my good friend, fellow coach Erdi. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think Erdi gave some great some great answers in regards to his coaching practice, flexibility training especially, and becoming more human. Thanks for joining us, suffering through the sauna and especially the cold.
Thanks for having me.
And I think whilst we're shivering here, probably should get back in the sauna and get warm.
Love the sauna, by the way.
Round 2, catch you in the next one.